Welcome back, everybody, to the Muskoka Bros podcast. This week we had a very special guest on our podcast. Michelle from Wimpy Camper was kind enough to join me for about 45 minutes just to have a nice little chat and getting her perspective on the outdoors in general. Some knives that. I'm sure if you follow her, you know she is very fond of. She was just an awesome person to talk to, an awesome person to get to know. And there was a few different technical difficulties that we had during the call, and I hope it doesn't take you guys out of it too much. But before we dive into that, guys, I'm recording this on Tuesday, June 2nd, I believe. It's Blackout Tuesday. We're just in the middle of everything that went on with George Floyd and the police in Minneapolis, the protests, the riots. And guys, it's a really, really sad time right now. This is not by any means a political show, a political channel or anything like that, but we do have a platform, as small as it is. It's still important to just express how saddened I am by this personally. I've seen stories like this before in the past. Nothing has really affected me this way before. So I don't know if it's just kind of the boiling point, or everybody just has their attention so tuned into the situation that things have really been amplified. A lot of light has been shed on just the challenges of life in America as a Black person, and I just wanted to take some time today and just show my support for Black people that have had to deal with racism their entire lives, that have had to live in fear of calling the police, who are supposed to be protecting. And I absolutely give a ton of kudos and credit to the officers that are handling these protests with grace, with compassion and kindness. Same goes for the protesters that are protesting peacefully. They are just absolutely doing the best thing possible. Certainly am not going to condone the rioting, the looting, the distractions that take away from the real issues at hand here, that are distracting from people trying to have peaceful protests. I also don't condone a lot of the actions I've seen from police officers dealing with some of these protesters. Definitely is not a good look right now for the police in this situation. So yeah, I just I needed to share this today. Hope it's not too much of a low note for this podcast, but even if it is, doesn't matter. It's important. It needs to be talked about, and hopefully, what I'm hoping for is that a resolution can be found here, that common ground can be found, that real change can be made, that it goes beyond a hashtag, goes beyond a day, and change begins. And yeah, I just needed to share this today, to use this platform to hopefully just show support, hopefully further the conversation, hopefully make some change in the world. Thank you everybody for listening, for checking out the podcast. We have, like I said, a really great episode ahead of us with Michelle. Before we get into that, though, I want to do This Week in Wildness. And As always, I got three things for us to check out, so let's just dive right in. Right off the top, we have some very exciting news involving the provincial parks here in Ontario, as well as Crown Land. They are going to be reopening for camping, which is just such amazing news. It has really been a challenge just with the beautiful weather that we've had at the start of May, and then it wasn't so hard to deal with when it snowed in the middle of May. But then last week we had midsummer weather, so it would have been really nice to have been able to get out. I had a camping trip planned with my dad to go up to Lake Sherbourne on May 1st, actually, and that had to get canceled, unfortunately. But yeah, so that is really, really good news. I am very excited to get back out on the water, get into a tent, make some campfires, have some s'mores, just some normal life stuff going on again, and hopefully we can get the whole province opened up soon. But I just saw today that Doug Ford has extended the emergency until June 30th, so I guess that's not happening super soon, but either way, encouraging signs going forward. Up next, we have a little YouTube channel that I stumbled across doing some research for a little project I was working on. The channel is called Falconry and Me, and it has absolutely nothing to do with camping or bushcraft or anything like that, but a lot of the videos are spent outdoors and with wild animals. And if you like birds, if you like ravens, hawks, owls, this lady has got all sorts of them. And just a really cool thing that drew me to that channel was the video of her raven. She's taught it to mimic, to make some different sounds and a few words and things like that. So it's very strange. It's something I didn't know that ravens could do. I kind of thought that was only reserved for parrots, but I guess ravens, crows, and some other birds as well can also learn how to talk and are also very intelligent. So anyways, all that to say, if you like birds, then go ahead and check that channel out. She's on YouTube. I don't know about Instagram or anything like that, but definitely check out the YouTube page because it's just a little bit of a different type of thing to watch. As you kind of get stuck in the rut for myself, just watching camping videos or knife reviews or whatever. So yeah, check it out, and for sure you're gonna have a good time there. The third segment of This Week in Wildness is a little bit of Muskoka Bros news. And I'm very excited to announce that we have an online store. You can find it on our website under merch. You can click through there, and we've got all sorts of stuff: sweaters, t-shirts, even onesies for babies. I think the sizes go from newborn up to like 8 months or something like that. So there's all sorts of different kinds of some Muskoka Bros swag that you can get there. So check that out. And thank you guys. Thank you for supporting the show, for just sticking around while we've kind of had reduced content going on just for the last 2 months here. It's been really a struggle to get out and film or do anything. So thanks for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoy the following episode with Michelle from the Wimpy Camper. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Muskoka Bros podcast. This is episode 9, and I'm very pleased to say that we're joined by a very special guest today. We have Michelle, or as most of you will know her, the Wimpy Camper. So thanks, Michelle, for coming on today.
Thanks for asking me to come on.
Well, it's always, honestly, it's always a pleasure to just talk to people that are passionate about the outdoors. And I mean, I've been following your account for a little while now, and it's the thing that has really kind of caught my eye has been the knives, because I personally also very much love knives. I love looking at knives, playing with knives, and I guess to kind of start the questions off, in terms of like the interview is like, do you know, or could you pinpoint the moment where you went kind of from like a casual interest in knives over to more of an obsession, more of a collector sort of feel?
That is a very good question. I'm really not sure. I think it all started with Instagram. Instagram is very dangerous, right? I mean, like, it shows you pictures of things that you might want to buy all the time. And when I first started on Instagram, I was just talking about that in my recent like Friday knife video, is that I didn't used to love knives at all. Like I loved knives the normal healthy amount, you know. I like them as tools. And then eventually from Instagram and seeing people's knives, I just started to view them as pieces of art. Like, and I was just, you know, I loved the scales, I loved the different handle materials, and then soon it evolved into being like, I'm totally interested in the steels now too. I really want to know about what the differences are between this steel and this steel. And then, like somebody else said, it's like a rabbit hole. You just keep going down it, and it's just deeper and deeper and deeper. So
Yeah. Well, I know you're actually. I think you're the reason that we ended up even messaging Scott over at Satterfield, was because you were posting about his knives and stuff, and um, man, like I've commented on a few of your things. It's like his stuff. You talk about art, like his stuff is so beautiful and it's so recognizable. You know, like I'm scrolling through Instagram and I can pinpoint just as I'm going through. That's a Satterfield. That's a Satterfield for sure. Like it's
yeah,
getting
I
really
remember
popular,
you
which is
recognized
cool.
one of his knives just based on the sheath. The knife was still in the sheath, and you were like, "That's a
Yeah.
Satterfield." Yeah,
Yeah, that guy is incredibly talented and great to work with as well. So little plug for Scott at Satterfield because his stuff is great. But
he deserves the plug
um,
for sure.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I have mine in a cupboard right now, and every I go in there very often. It's my little tool cupboard, so I'm always opening it, and I just spend a second to linger looking at the knife, and then get sad because I'm not camping and stuff. But it's fun.
Yeah,
It's fun at least to have it there to look at.
I know the gear cover.
So I
Sometimes
gotta.
you go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying that sometimes the gear cover. Sometimes I'm going in there to tidy it up, and I just spend and end up like making more of a mess because I start pulling things out and being like, "Oh, like yeah, this was cool. Oh yeah, I should clean this up." And you know, pretty soon you've just made a disaster. So
Yeah, yeah. So I have to ask this. I'm not gonna ask you which one is your favorite because I'm sure that you've got, yeah, I'm sure that changes on a day-to-day basis which knives are your favorites. But in terms of like an all-arounder or something that's really capable, what's your kind of go-to in terms of characteristics for a knife that if you're going on a trip, you're only gonna bring one knife. What are you looking for in that knife?
well, I think I always want to preface like when I started doing knife videos, I was really nervous about answering questions about knives or talking about knives because I want to always kind of give a disclaimer, which is I am a knife nut. Like I just like knives a lot. I don't know a lot about knives, but this is my personal opinion. So I'll preface it like that. So for an all rounder, I think maybe it has to do with like what I've been exposed to, but I don't like micro bevels because I'm really bad at sharpening them. So I can't maintain them. So I'd rather have a single bevel, like whether it's convex or Scandi. Um,
Right.
and I like that kind of typical belt size. So like around 4 inches. And I like pretty handles, but I'm always very aware that when I get a pretty handled knife, I don't treat it the same. I do baby it. I try not to, but I'm always like, oh no, that was, you know, that could have scratched it. You know, like, so anyway, that's kind of my go-to. What about for you, for your knives?
Oh, for me, I'm the same as you. I love knives. I don't really know anything at all about them. But when we were talking with Scott, the three of us, we kind of each wanted to do something different, right? So David got the classic like bushcraft small, I think 4 inch blade, and Matt, he's a hunter, so he got the Skinner, so that's like a really functional knife for him. And then as I was scrolling through his site, I saw another knife. I was like, oh, that one looks pretty cool. And it turns out to be his camp knife, which is like 11 inches long. So, like, this long overall. And when I got it, I saw it. I was not expecting the chunkiness of the handle or the overall length to be that long. I was like, holy cow, I just bought like a Rambo knife here. Like, so, but that being said, for an all-rounder, I think it'll do really well, at least for my purposes, because what I was hoping was that I would get something fairly big so that I wouldn't have to bring a hatchet or an axe, and I would just be able to use it for batoning. So I think it's got, what does it have? Maybe 6 or 7 inches of blade length, so it can really tackle some large pieces of wood, as long as, you know, they're good for splitting without knots and things like that, because I don't really want to go pounding on it, you know, like crazy either, because it's so beautiful. So I'm
It
kind
is
of the
so
same.
Yeah, I mean that size, I'm sure it could handle pretty much anything. And it was Elmax
Yeah.
steel, right, that you used, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I know it was beautiful. I remember seeing it. It looked almost like a French trade knife. Is that kind of what it looked like?
Kind of, yeah. It's to me, it kind of looked like a chef's knife with a really thick spine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The thick spine will is it's probably just a beast.
Yeah, it is. It's a monstrosity, but it's absolutely beautiful. So that, honestly, that is my favorite knife that I've ever owned. It's also by far the nicest knife I've ever even been around. It's like, never mind. Like, even looking in stores and stuff, I've never seen anything like that. So I'm really, really pleased with that, and I can't wait to. I haven't been able to actually get out on a camping trip and use it, but I have been able to kind of play around with it in my backyard. So yeah, it's good. You know, it's good for, like I said, it's good for batoning, it's good for carving, it's good for food prep, and all this stuff is exactly what I was hoping for. So yeah. And I mean, obviously, like, you have a lot of top quality, kind of boutique style gear and stuff like that. But I wanted to really ask, how does Fiskars fit into all of that for you?
Oh man, I'm such a Fiskars fan. That's probably why you're asking, right? Because I'm always
Yes.
posting about my Fiskars. It helps that I'm not an axe junkie yet. You know,
Right.
knock on wood. I hope that that doesn't happen because that's like two addictions is too many. You know, but
Yeah.
so I have a Gransfors and I have a Holtzbrook Yoniker. So I have that Gransfors small forest axe, which is the one that Ray Mears is like, this is the axe that you should travel with. Anyway, so that's why I bought it, and it is a beautiful axe, very good quality, but I still find myself going back to the Fiskars over and over because it is so light and so strong. Like I held up the Yoniker, which is only about like a 9.5 inch
Mm.
hatchet, and and I was thinking, oh yeah, this is nice and light. I'll take this on my day trip because I went out recently and I was like, this is nice. This will be light. And I thought based on the size, because I wanted to pack light. Then I lifted up the Fiskars and I was like, oh my God, the Fiskars is lighter. Like it still wins every time when I'm trying to go lighter weight or if I'm just trying to split wood. The only thing that it won't do well at is like carving. Like if you need something, or the other thing probably too is, which I have no skills in, which is probably why I keep going to the Fiskars, is if you're wanting to section up a log, the Fiskars I was told is that the shape is not good. So that's why it works for me because all I'm doing is wood splitting. So I love the
Right.
Fiskars. It's like the Mora of axes, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Actually, at my old house, we had a wood burning stove, and I had went through, I don't know, 3 or 4 different wood splitting axes before, and they were all like $50 or whatever before I splurged on the Fiskars splitting maul, and I was amazed by how light it was for how heavy the head was, but how light and comfortable the handle was. And then I also bought a Fiskars hatchet like what you have, and I absolutely loved it. I had there for me there was no downsides, and so that's why I partly why I wanted to ask you about that too, because I don't really see anybody using like Canadian Tire stuff, right?
I know it's just so light, and even though it's kind of, and that's why I call them like I think they're like the Moras of the axe world because Moras are ugly, but they work like they just work so good, and so you can't,
Yeah.
yeah. Can't get away
And
from
the
it.
price, really, like the price, you can't really beat that either. You know, for somebody who's just looking to get out there, right, to get out camping and have something to split with or whatever, it's like, you know, anybody can afford that hatchet. It's not something you really need to save up for.
Totally.
So I that's partly what I like about it. That's partly, and the lightweight is perfect. And so are you I think I just kind of caught a glimpse from one of your posts talking about ultralight camping. Are you, is that something you've always been interested in, or is that something that's more developing kind of lately?
Well, I started out like getting into the outdoors with hiking, and then it became a little bit of backpacking. But now I've become like a lazy a lazy person like camping. I just like to walk into like not very far and
Mm.
just like camp and enjoy myself and cook steaks and stuff. So I now am not really into the ultralight. Like I like the ultralight for the challenge of like, you
Mm.
know, can you know how much stuff can you carry and be self-sufficient and it's everything you need without it really tiring you out. And I had talked to my friend Jamie about we were talking about doing a lightweight challenge that we were going to bring a limited number of items, try and keep it under either a certain number or a certain weight.
Mm.
And so that's when I was kind of like, oh yeah, how light could I go? And thinking about that survival aspect too. If you're out for a hike and you get lost, you don't want to be carrying, you know, a wooden axe and like a bunch of leather gear. And at least in my mind, I don't think that's very practical to be hiking around the mountains with that. So
Mm.
that's probably where the interest in ultralight stuff comes from.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting for sure. Coming from that hiking background, I've had a couple of friends that have done some really massive hikes, and it's cool to kind of follow along with that in their Instagram and Facebook posts and stuff, and just seeing like you said, kind of how little you need to bring for a trip, and how light it can get. And I mean, it's always inspiring to kind of, this is why I love Instagram, is because you can follow all sorts of people that inspire you in different ways, and even to do something you love in a different way. But I mean, like for you, who are some people for you that you look up to in this community that maybe you see as a role model or an inspiration that has challenged you in ways that you didn't think that you might be interested in?
Scott Matthews, Adventure Addict, is
Okay.
a guy that I learned a lot from. I've pressured him for I think like a year to create a YouTube channel because I think he has so much to offer. But
Mm.
you know, it's a lot of work. So I right now I'm just watching him do a lot of Instagram stories. I love his stories and I'm learning a lot from him. Another guy that um, I there's so many like Clayton Ogre is another guy that Clayton underscore Ogre that I talk to quite regularly, and we talk a lot about gear and about different skills and little DIY stuff. And of course, speaking of DIY stuff, people like Simple Woodsman Johnny, he knows so much. And then the big one, the big guy, you know, the big guy of the Pacific Northwest, the Northwest Primate. I think we probably everyone seems to be following him. He's at like something like I don't know, he's almost close to 100K followers, and it's amazing because
Wow.
he's the guy that posts no gear. There is nothing about gear on his page. It's just skills. So he is so creative, and I don't even know how he knows so much. He's like an encyclopedia. So those are some
Mm.
people that probably are great to check out and follow.
Yeah, well, that's cool. It's funny, like you get kind of, or for myself, like I get kind of caught up in the Ontario bubble, right? Like there's a lot of really big bushcraft camping, whatever, people out here in Ontario as well, and it's cool to see that same kind of bubble exists out west with like, you know, BC's own big bushcrafter camper guys too. Like that's pretty cool.
Definitely, yeah, he's huge. You guys should check him out. I mean, his stuff is Pacific Northwest very much so because he lives in the Pacific Northwest. So there's a lot of materials and resources that he's using, but he knows all kinds of stuff. Like he's done posts about like cold water and what to do to light a fire if your hands are so cold that they're not working. He's done posts about like creating stone tools. All this stuff is kind of like transferable wherever you are, kind of thing. So
That's kind of stuff that I love too, is skills. Like if they're, yeah, I love looking at gear. I love just seeing the things that people have, but to actually know how to do stuff, I feel like is actually far more important if you're trying to learn and survive and things like that. Even just as like a fun challenge yourself, getting out there with minimal stuff, how to survive. So
totally, yeah.
yeah.
I feel like talking about the skills versus gear stuff is like a topic that I often struggle with. I don't know how you feel about it, Dylan, because like being on Instagram makes you kind of get obsessed with gear, and then it kind of does make you sometimes forget about why you got into the outdoors in the first place, which is learning skills and having experiences and things like that, and then becoming more of a gear collector. Like I'm definitely guilty of going back and forth. Sometimes I'm just purely gear obsessed, and then other times I'm like, no wait, you should learn some stuff,
Well, yeah, personally, I don't have I'm not snooty. So if somebody is obsessed with gear and it's all got related to bushcraft and outdoors and stuff like that, like that's fine. If somebody is loving the skills side of it and they're like, they don't care about gear, that's awesome too. I don't think there's like a hierarchy of what's better. Sure, you have some people that literally don't go outside. Maybe not literally, but they don't go out. They just get the stuff or whatever. But I mean, it's like I said to you when we were messaging back and forth. I like to talk to people that are passionate about stuff, and it doesn't matter to me, if they're getting out 15 times a year or 100 times, or maybe they go out camping once a year. For me, I'm not a bushcrafter. I'm not really an outdoorsman. Like we're the Muskoka Bros are part of this community, and David and Matt really are more into that stuff. I love just going regular plain vanilla camping. But I love watching and consuming the stuff that other people are doing in terms of the hardcore bushcraft, right? So
yeah.
so that's where I land on that spectrum of different skill levels. And I like learning skills, but I also really love collecting gear. The only problem with that is I don't have very much money, so it's hard for me to do that.
It is a problem, isn't it, being a gear collector? Yeah, but you're so right. There shouldn't be a hierarchy. I like that perspective. It's best to be non-snooty
Yeah.
and not judge each other. So
I mean, we're all in this together, right? We're all just loving the outdoors, wanting to get out, and that's kind of a Muskoka Bros motto. Is we're kind of hoping to appeal to the everyday person that is just sitting on the couch, and we'd rather just instead of watching the TV all night, you get outside. Maybe you have start a little fire in your backyard with your ferro rod and a knife, like just for fun. There's nothing wrong with that either, right? So yeah. So anyways, that's where I kind of land on that, and I also wanted to say I've said it before as well, but I find it so cool and so encouraging for me because I'm a dad. I have a daughter, and it's so cool to see people like yourself and Alexis Outdoors is another really big one. Just absolutely killing it out there on Instagram and YouTube and stuff, and it's so cool to see more women getting involved and in this kind of air in space that has been mostly men and things like that. On the flip side of that, though, have you ever had to deal with any of that negativity kind of coming your way, being a woman and doing this type of stuff?
that's such a great topic, Dylan. Like I think that I've been very lucky that in general, I feel like the community has been so welcoming and accepting. I just like the reason why I don't show my face is because I don't I put myself out there to the amount that I'm comfortable with, and I think that right now this is where I'm comfortable. But I think that Meandering Maker guy, he made a really good post about this a while back. I think on International Women's Day, he said it really well, which is that women have to think more about things like their privacy and their safety and negative comments. It's just something that's it's out there and it exists,
Yeah.
and so I haven't had to deal with that, but I'm sure in some way, maybe on some level, my desire for privacy comes from that consideration, you know. But no, I've always felt very like accepted. I mean, okay, I was teasing somebody the other day about that, you know, I'm not a bro or whatever, because everyone says thanks bro or thanks brother or whatever, you know, and it's nice. And sometimes I don't correct them because I'm just like, oh well, you know, you can't tell on Instagram, so you feel like it's a male dominated place because of people saying things like that. So you feel sometimes like that reminds you that you're in a place that usually women are not, and that's why they're saying thanks brother, you know, or thanks bro or whatever. But no, not negative. It's just been like mistaken identity type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's kind of you know, at least that's better than the negative stuff. It's like at least it's that. But I gotta say it is really cool. It's very encouraging for me as a dad because yeah, like having a daughter, you know, this is all stuff that I never had to think about before. Kind of, you know, like this kind of gender roles and things like that. I haven't really had to think much about that, but now it's something I consider a lot, and I think about my daughter. Her name is Hannah. I think about Hannah's future and what that looks like, and all I want her to be able to do is to just whatever she wants to do, and I don't you know, you don't want any barriers or anything like that in the way. So it's encouraging to hear that this community has been welcoming, that it's been supportive, and I think part of that too, from what I've noticed about your posts, is that you have a lot of humility. You're very humble when it comes to talking about any of the stuff that you post, and I think it comes from a very honest place, which I think resonates with a lot of people as well. So,
well, thank you, Dylan. That I really actually appreciate that. I think that my humility, my that sense that you're getting is probably just because I honestly don't know everything, and because I always tell people the reason why I call myself the Wimpy Camper is because I'm always scared. Like I go out into nature and I'm like doing stuff that people are like, oh, you're so hardcore, and I'm like, but I'm so scared. Like I'm scared doing it. I'm scared sleeping in the woods. I don't sleep well. Like, but I like it. I like the challenge, and I was a late bloomer to the outdoors. I didn't get into it until quite a bit later, just having, you know, parents that weren't into it, and so I came into it much later, which is why I came at it as like a learner. I think I'm a learner for life kind of thing.
Yeah, that's super funny because so literally my next question, I was gonna ask I was gonna ask where the name for Wimpy Camper came from, and then I was just gonna compliment you on your hardcoreness. Like I have it written down. I'll send you the question later, but it's just that was literally my next question. Was
Yeah,
just that,
no,
so.
I don't think I'm hardcore at all. Like people think I solo camp, and that's only because I take pictures of my shelter. But it's because I try and respect my friends' privacy, and most of the friends that I hang out with are not on Instagram, so I don't take pictures of their stuff and their shelter setups and stuff. But I'm never alone. I never go out alone. I think I've gone out alone once, and that was in my first year of getting really into bushcraft and survival and stuff, and I was trying to push myself to do difficult things. And I had this really great conversation with I can't remember, somebody on Instagram commented and said, oh, how did you get over being scared and doing solo stuff? Because I'd like to do solo stuff. And I just said, I've actually not done solo stuff, and I've stopped pushing myself to try to do solo stuff because I already know now I know that I just don't want to. Like I think I wouldn't enjoy it. Like I could keep working towards it, but now it's not a goal because I want to enjoy my time. And if I did it, I'd probably not sleep a wink, and I'd just be like, you know, like wanting to go home all night long, you know?
Yeah. That's something I've never got to experience, is a solo alone overnight camping trip of any kind. Like I've always had either my dad is there or friends or going with like as part of a church group or whatever. I've never been out in the woods like Algonquin or any provincial park or anything like that totally alone. But what was it like? Like I'm just curious, what was going camping alone like?
Well, I didn't camp alone. I went for a day trip alone. And so I went to this spot that I thought was unknown. And, you know, and it isn't very well known. I just come across it once with a friend. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to spend a day there. And I prepared myself psychologically. I brought a radio because I thought that having the noise would help me feel more comfortable. And I hiked in, and the whole time that I hiked in, I was like singing as loud as I could because I was sure that a bear was around the corner, every minute. And then I got there and I had a little fire, ate lunch, and then I gave myself a heart attack because obviously I was in an area that people do walk through, because then a dog came up to me and I thought it was a bear. Like I just saw this big animal loping towards me and I was like, oh my God, it's a bear, I knew it. And then some guys like called this dog back and I was like, oh my God, okay, so I'm like on an area that people know about. I'm not that alone. Yeah, so that was my alone experience.
No, I honestly, I know the feeling of thinking you're alone and just like singing, belting, or doing something really embarrassing, and you turn around and somebody's there. It's like, oh, cool. That's the worst.
I know. I was like, oh yeah, that was a funny experience. So that was the last time that I did it, and that wasn't why I decided not to go. It wasn't because it didn't go well. It was just like over time, I guess I just, it's not really a goal of mine anymore. Maybe because I've just realized that I just want to have fun. So
yeah. Yeah, that's that's a totally legitimate reason to go camping, just to have fun, right? Like
totally.
you don't need to torture yourself to go camping or anything, but especially for you guys too, because out west, like you have grizzly bears to worry about and stuff. I know it's probably not super common to come across them, but the danger is always there. And oh man, I've seen some pictures of like a tranquilized one or whatever with its paw up, right? And a person's hand just looks like this little tiny little thing compared to it. And I'm just like, oh, I could not imagine running into one of those things.
Me neither. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that, I tell myself that they're not that common, but they have been spotted in the area that I go camping occasionally. So I try not to think about it, but that is another like very real concern, which is why I also don't go alone, because I think that it's just a little bit riskier. So why do something that's, for me, that I feel like I'm not going to enjoy it. And if something happened to me, I just would regret not having another person with me.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to jump back real quick too, because you mentioned that you were kind of a late bloomer in terms of outdoors type stuff, and your parents weren't really into it. So where did that come from? Was it just again with the Instagram thing, it just kind of grew from following other people, or where did that kind of start for you?
Well, I was really lucky that I, when you're going through times of like, what's that called? Like a coming of age thing, you're trying to like learn more about yourself. And at that time I was feeling kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing and confused as a young adult. And I had a friend that was really into hiking. So she started bringing me, and I learned a lot from her, like from stuff that's basic now to me, like basic, like don't wear cotton. I almost got a little bit hypothermic one time when I was winter snowshoeing with her on a long trip. I had sweated so much that I was like, I couldn't stop shivering. Like I was getting so tired of shivering. And she told me that it's because I was wearing cotton. So all that stuff I learned from her. And then I had always been interested in survival stuff as a kid. I always really liked like Swiss Family Robinson. I loved the, Castaway movie, and I watched Survivor Man, the show. And then one day I stumbled on YouTube on Ray Mears and this word bushcraft, And as soon as I heard the word, I was like, I think I know what bushcraft is. I think I like it, The word made sense to me. And anyway, so then that's when I was like, I should try this out. And then that's kind of when it started. So it was like later. I was like in my 20s when I started getting into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's kind of a similar thing for me, but I've camped all my life and stuff like that. So the outdoors interest has always been there, but it's really only been over the last couple of years that we've been doing Muskoka Bros that I have had that interest in bushcraft. Like that, you're right, that word, it's almost like there's something magical about that word because it perfectly encapsulates exactly what it is. It's bushcraft, like you're crafting in the bush. It's just,
and it's not just crafting. Like the word like craft is like an art form. It's like like how a tradesman or a craftsman is a master of his craft. It's like being a master of the woods. And that's why I was like, oh my God, that sounds so cool. A master of the woods, that how to like live in the forest, that sounded,
The things that really appeal to me that I haven't gotten to test out in in like a real life camping scenario are the shelter buildings, like the natural shelters. We've got a couple of videos of me doing different types of shelters. One of them was I built a duct tape tent, which was really fun.
Did you? That's cool.
Totally very impractical way of making it. It took maybe like almost a day. Yeah, probably all day straight, and it was like the worst tent that you've ever seen. So I'm like, that's probably not practical, but I love just building stuff, building shelters. That is the thing that really appeals to me for bushcraft wise. But like I said, I haven't really gotten to test it out too much.
I'm gonna have to look up that video. It's called did you say it's like a tarp duct tape tent? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, duct tape tent.
Okay, I'll look it up because that actually sounds really interesting. Like that sounds like a survival resource that if you were carrying around a duct tape and you had a tarp in your, backpack.
Yeah, well, it was just I think one roll of duct tape total, and I had a piece of string or something that I took from the fence, and then secured it to the ground somehow, and then just made like strips going down like this, so it was just a little A-frame duct tape tent. But it was I was planning on doing an inside layer to keep it from being sticky, but I was running out of light and time, so I just had it the one layer with the sticky stuff pointing inside, and it was not comfy, but a fun video nonetheless, for sure.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, so what was I gonna ask?
You were talking about national shelters. You were talking about building stuff.
Yeah, have you gotten into anything like that in terms of shelters, or have you like, aside from knives, is there a main area that you kind of are focused on?
Shelter building, I was really wanting to build a good shelter. I've now made two attempts. Like they were like A for effort, but F for product, So the first time I tried a natural shelter, it just was took so much longer than I had expected that I actually didn't really finish. And I ended up just using a tarp, and it had some pieces of wood attached to it. Basically, it looks horrible. And then I tried again the next year, and this time I did it with a friend. So I was like, okay, this is going to be easier. We're definitely going to finish. And we did finish, but the woods that I tend to go to, at least the set of woods that I go to all the time, they have very mangly, twisted trees that are half rotten. You lived out west before, right, Dylan?
Yeah, I lived in. I went to school in Spokane, in the States. I was there for maybe a year or so. But it's Spokane, like, it's not quite the same as BC. Like BC.
No, it's not as rainy, right? Yeah. So anyway, our woods are very like soaked, and so what happened was we had totally planned on making an Instagram perfect lean-to, with perfect logs. And you guys actually, is it Dave that has that really great looking shelter?
Yes.
We had planned to make something like that. And then our end result, you can see it on my Instagram, it's just like, it looks like a hovel of like somebody that, has come into hard times and is now living in the forest. That's what it looked like. And it was pretty laughable. We took pictures of it, but it was pretty sad looking. So no, not really any success. I do want to try again, but I think we have to find a different kind of forest, or just give in and stop doing a lean-to, because our Pacific Northwest forest is just so unique that way that I think it's got to be probably maybe just a debris shelter or something else like that. That's something that I actually would like to learn more about, is what it would be a more primitive shelter that you could, or primitive / bushcraft / survival shelter that is using natural resources, that is home to the, super wet coast like here. Because in the books, like Morska Hansky, I think he was writing more for Ontario and like the boreal forest and stuff, where that's not really what it looks like here.
Right. Well, I mean, I've obviously never been camping out there, but I watched the first season of Alone, and I mean, they went probably a bad time of year, first of all, because it's just leading into winter, but like you talk about the rain, and then the one guy was kind of bragging about how his dad taught him how to carry logs and stuff like that or something, and so he grabbed this log, I don't know, maybe it was this big around, from like a red cedar or a big cedar or something, and he carried one or two of them and put them down, and he was just gassed for the rest of the day. And it's like there's nothing else that is around really, so he was cutting
Oh
down these
man.
massive trees. Like, so I mean, I've never been, but I can kind of understand what you're saying. How it's hard to build a shelter out of natural stuff around there for sure.
I mean, I'm sure it's just my lack of skill. It's not that it's not that it's harder, although sometimes that's my excuse. I tell people it's way harder out here. It's just way harder. It's rainy. But you guys, it's way colder and it's not as cold here.
Yeah,
It's just wet and mild. So every
yeah,
environment has its challenges.
yeah. Well, I mean, raining. You can warm up if you're cold. You can get warm, but you can't dry stuff out if it's
Yeah.
wet. Like,
At least that's the trouble that I have for sure is like once you get
yeah,
things wet, you're just like wet. Yeah.
yeah. It must be like I remember just watching that show, just thinking, man, it rained probably every single day that they were there, probably twice a day, probably most of the day, most times. And I just thought, what a miserable experience that must be. And actually, and Joe Robinette was on that first season as well.
I watched that, and he was the best filmer of that whole series. I think ever since
Oh
then,
yeah,
it seems like the production crew seems to have given them all like tips on how to film or something. But yeah, I really enjoyed season one and season two because it was in our kind of like our backyard, that kind of forest, and it was just very. There's something very like comforting to see experts struggle in the environment that you're struggling. You're like, good. It's not just me. It's just like it sucks, right? It sucks.
yeah. It sucks for everybody. Yeah, that's funny. Have you ever been like have you ever scrolled kind of back really far in your Instagram account just to kind of see where you've been and note the growth that you've experienced over I don't like how long have you been doing this for? A few years like on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like it's been 3 years, but maybe it's been four. But yeah, sometimes I'll go back and it is encouraging because I remember my first feather stick. I had watched, of course, I watched the experts on YouTube, so that then I was like, oh, I want to know how to do this, and I tried to make a feather stick, and it was terrible. It was like it just looked like anyway, it did not look like a feather stick.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
Oh,
thought I got
sorry.
muted. Um, yeah, so I think that I can see that I now can make feather sticks. I now can use a fire steel because when I first started, I could not light a fire with a fire steel. Um, so yeah, that was a big win. I remember that day very clearly. And what else? I also couldn't. I used to not be able to sleep very well outdoors, and I think this past winter I was really proud of myself because I actually slept through the night. And I was like, whoa, that's great. I must be psychologically adapting to this because I used to hardly sleep when I was out there. So those are small
Mm.
changes that I feel like that shows like my experience level and my comfort and my confidence is growing in the outdoors, which is awesome.
Yeah, well, that's super cool. I always think it's neat to look back, um, see where you've been. Especially, I feel like it's really easy to get down on yourself as well. You know, when you're trying something and it's not quite working or whatever, you kind of feel like you kind of feel stuck or whatever. To go back and have that catalog of where you started from, is a great way to just to kind of get you excited again, get you encouraged again to keep pushing and to see that growth is so it's so exciting, right? So
So
that's
true.
why I ask. I think it's a really important. Hey guys, it's Dylan. Just quick little editor's note here. Michelle and I had some technical difficulties at this point. The call on Zoom started getting really robotic and staticky, so we had to hang up and call back. But yeah, we're just kind of wrapping it up, saying goodbye, and I hope you enjoy the rest. All right. Well, anyways, I was just wrapping it up, saying thank you for coming on, and I just I find your stuff really inspiring, and it's a pleasure to get to talk to somebody um, that is out there doing really cool stuff. So
Thanks so much for having me. I have to say that hearing your podcast with your dad and kind of chatting with you made me feel just like I would really enjoy chatting with you, and it was really fun. So thanks for doing that.
Awesome. Well, it's always great to hear that people like what we're doing. So, all right, Michelle, we'll talk to you later, and thanks again.
Okay, thanks again, Dylan. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast today, for supporting the channel, for liking posts on Instagram, subscribing, all that good stuff. Just thank you for staying with us as we navigate through this difficult time during the COVID-19 shutdowns. And yeah, guys, big thank you to Michelle, total class act, coming on. And really enjoyed getting to talk to her and get her perspective on a lot of stuff. So make sure that you check out her stuff on Instagram. She does a Friday live chat about knives every Friday, so check that out. And yeah, head over to the Wimpy Camper. And remember, you just got to get out there.